Thank you for joining the Minority Alliance organization meeting. Today we'll be discussing reparations and also a few current events that have happened recently that affect the minority community directly. And when it comes to reparations, this week we had actually put up a post through the organization's page on just giving people a little bit of ideas so that they would start brainstorming for themselves on ways that we could see reparations and it actually be a physical thing within minority communities, and a great breakdown of certain areas that we actually need reparations in. So with talking with you today, Mark, as I had asked you a little while ago, what is the reason that we need reparations, would you say, in a lot of minority communities?
I would say first and foremost that the reason behind why this particular ethnicity would need reparations as opposed to any other, you have to understand that every other minority group that comes to America, first of all, the overwhelming majority came to this country willingly. They came from established cultures. They brought that culture with them. Now, that culture may have been challenged in this country, but they brought their culture, their traditions, their language, their religion, all those things with them. For Africans brought to this country forcefully, it was a completely different matter. Every single one of those constructs that are built into the identity of a person from their country, from a person from a cultural perspective, they were all broken to be brought here. Those religious, whatever religious ties they would have were shattered and replaced with Christianity. The traditions that they would have had were broken and destroyed for what they were, brought to here. Those who were able to conform because they were basically beaten into it or tortured into it or born into it had to conform. Those who did not simply died. So we don't have, and even coming out of slavery, all of the work that was done to break down Africans and supplanted Africans as a culture, all those things remained in place. They remained in place. They were never challenged, and that continued all the way up until this day. So the foundation of having ties to the old country, so to speak, they didn't exist. They don't exist even to today. They do not exist, and so you're kind of starting from the bottom. Number one. You don't have any of the things that are any of the advantages, any of the generational advantages, whether it comes to generational legacies in education, generational legacies in wealth distribution, generational legacies in land ownership or business ownership. None of those things existed. Anything that we kind of got, we kind of had to go get. And, sure, a few people here and there were able to do that, but the foundational element that you see in most other communities, it just isn't there. Another reason is that there's also a broken mentality of not being able to come together to unify, to even build one of our own. Even now, here in the 21st century, now we're 2 decades into the 21st century, it is a struggle to kind of have any type of unity for even building that sort of thing. Even when you see it on a small scale, it's kind of like surprising because, again, this was something that was culturalistically bred, beaten, and kind of de-educated out of that specific community as opposed to any other. So, in looking at reparations, why someone would need to repair, it would be for the same cultural destroying reason why it was necessary to do so for Native Americans. Native Americans, even though it is woefully inadequate, did receive something of a reparation from the United States government when it came to land, when it came to certain educational considerations and other considerations. to kind of at least get a foothold on the absolute decline of their culture as their culture was shattered so that their land could be stolen. And we have to call things for what they are, and it's one of the biggest problems that we have with dealing with this is that people do not want to call things for what they are. They don't want to deal with the situation. So there are always these roadblock, kind of catch-all questions that are meant to kind of undercut the idea that something wrong was done and that it needs to be repaired. Even the word reparations to some feels like a conciliation that, oh, we did something wrong. Well, this has nothing necessarily to do with you, but the position where you are and the position where we are is based on decisions and things that were done at that point. You currently benefit from it. We currently have to try and overcome it. Those things that existed then still exist now in a different form, but it's still there. So those things still need to be repaired, just the same as we still need to be cognizant of the continued destruction of the Native American community based on all of the different things that are going on, even though the land they were given, and in many cases is trash land that people did not want. It was, it's rife with inopportunity. You see Native American reservations as being some of the highest unemployment rates in the country by a very large margin. So even in that regard, it wasn't properly repaired. And, so for both cultures, for theirs and for ours, there were cultural destroying aspects that need that type of stabilizing repair so that those people can at least have the opportunity to have the same type of equal footing that you see in a lot of different other cultures that come to the country and, of their own free will, able to bring their religion, able to bring their culture, and able to bring their systems, being able to get businesses, being able to have businesses that are tax-free for certain amounts of years, all those other things. And all we're asking for is kind of a foothold to get some of that back, and there are even, ways to do it. There are plenty of people who have put in, their own reparations plans. I know, I wrote one myself that actually had, methods and ways to pay for it, because again, that's going to be another one of the catch-all questions. One of them is, well, why do we need reparations? I mean, I turn on the TV and I see NBA players, I see NFL players. I mean, I see a black president, I see a senator, I see, this, that, and the other. I mean, you guys have got it good now. Why would there need to be reparations? You guys can get rich in America. Why would there need to be reparations? And then another catch-all is, well, how do we pay for it? I mean, do we penalize people today for something that happened so long ago? These are cheap outs that deny the justice that is due for all the things that were done. Again, reparations is not a referendum. It is simply an attempt to repair some of the wrongs that were done.
Yes, sir. And so when we look at the aspect of the list that I had put up actually this week, one thing I wanted to go ahead and highlight is, I know with reparations, as you said, we're looking as a community what could be the barriers that could be placed in our way, so that we already ahead of time know these different things, and we can go ahead and attack ways we can overcome them when they do come up. And one of the main highlighted points that I had put is, how do you determine who deserves reparations? Which African descendants have been here long enough to benefit from reparations in this country and things of that sort. And the thing that came to me was, I believe, reparations should be due to any African American whose genealogy can be traced back to the 1964 Civil Rights Act. And I say that personally because I believe when that Civil Rights Act was passed, that we were promised at that time, uh, a different level of equality than what we've seen play out. And I believe at that time period, any African American who's been, or genealogy, their family can be traced back to that time period. They have been affected, by the inequality in America. So I believe anybody who's, if we had to put a time period on, because it gets to a point where it's difficult trying to trace back to actual slavery, to say, well, are you a descendant of a direct slave? And, we run into years of just trying to figure out who, is qualified for these things, and I believe that takes a huge point out of what we're trying to do, period. So I believe that's one of the things we should be looking at is, what barriers would be in the way from us actually receiving, true reparations and things of that nature. And another thing is, when we're talking about ways we could pay for it and things of that nature, um, you have a ton of corporations that have indirectly or directly of gotten rich or been built off the result of, money that came from slavery and things of that nature. So when you look at the corporations of America, I think uh, Bernie had a great idea when he said, we should tax Wall Street on speculation and things of that nature. And I believe through that same path, is a way we should pay for reparations. I believe there should be a tax due to these corporations that have, as I said, indirectly or directly, you know, benefited off of slavery being a part of this country. You know, we need to see, as I say, like I looked a little bit into Wells Fargo and the way Wells Fargo was built, and Wells Fargo is one of the biggest banking entities in America, and they directly have, history ties to slavery, and they have done nothing to amend, you know, on their end. So when you look at it in that aspect, we deserve, some of this percentage of reparations that we're asking from, so that it's not directly taken, from the everyday taxpayer. Because I mean, personally, I do not believe that. I believe we have to come up with ways that we can self-fund reparations within the country, and it's not taking more, out of other citizens' pockets. So, I mean, I believe a tax on corporations would be a great way, to fund actual reparations given within minority communities. Also, when you look at one of the industries that now in the United States is becoming more legal, and there are more talks about legalizing it nationwide, the cannabis industry, which you look at minorities in all areas that have, received criminal, you know, situations and been in criminal situations, due to cannabis and things of that sort. And now it's something that's legal. And what is it? In some form, it's legal in over 48 states. Whether that's medically or, recreationally legal. Uh, the funds we're seeing from this industry, because this industry, since it's really started, in America, it's been one of the most wealthy revenue creating industries in the last 5-10 years. So due to the fact, as I said, these different industries, that have directly and indirectly affected minorities, you know in an equality sense, I believe, it's time for us to receive a fair share from these industries actually growing, in America now, especially when it comes to the cannabis industry, billions and billions of dollars. Why are we not seeing a percentage of that go towards minority communities already, further than reparations and things of that nature?
No, I 100% agree with that. I mean, the industries that have directly benefited from it. Now, I'm not naive. Any type of taxation that will be done on the corporate level, they're going to pass those costs down to the consumer. So essentially, the American public is going to be, paying for this, in some indirect or direct way. Now, and let's also make no mistake that in any plan of reparations, that specific fact will be used, kind of a crutch reason as to why not to approve something like that. But a couple of things need to be understand when we're talking about, a tax for something like that on the corporate level. I mean, even 2% of industries that are, so gigantic. The cotton industry, for example, is a perfect one that comes to mind. The tobacco industry, the two industries that made America the rich nation that it is today, which was both born and bred of slave labor. Those two things right there are a perfect start. Another thing that's also a perfect start, that pretty much never gets brought up is things that are property and monies that are seized in kind of the war on drugs that have been going on for several decades as well. At this point, it is not hyperbole, it is not speculation that crack was introduced into the minority community to help fund a war in Nicaragua. At this point, I mean, they've even made movies about it at this point, several documentaries, people, books, memoirs, all those things, so this isn't speculation, this is reality. So, you know, I don't have a single problem whatsoever with the cannabis industry being kind of taxed in that manner, or any other type of, anything that is seized by the federal government, anything that is sold off by the federal government in these seizures, going directly, to minority communities as a reparations. And for something like that, I'm talking to the tune of, at least 80%, in the case of seizures and things like that, because again, you know, these things were directly introduced into the Black community, and then it was like, okay, well, you guys deal with it. And by the way, we're going to go ahead and mass incarcerate you guys for doing it. We're going to introduce it into your communities. We're going to penalize you for doing it. We're going to have mass incarcerations for doing it. And then we're going to build a prison industrial complex where we're going to basically subvert the 13th Amendment and have all sorts of basically free slave labor based on an incarceration that we imposed on you for a drug we introduced into your community. So when people think that this was from slavery and this was a long time ago, absolutely not. This happens today. And this has been something that's been an ongoing situation, an ongoing issue. Therefore, the need for those type of reparations are even more so, because when people use the word systematic racism and they use that phrase, that terminology, people have to understand how unbelievably systematic the system is. And it is that system that needs to fund any type of reparations, because it is that system that has directly led to all of this pain, all of this destruction.
Yes, sir. And I mean, one point that you just made, with the war on drugs, like that, I had to end up writing that down in my notes over here. Like that's also a huge, huge, area where we see tons of police auctions where they're selling off cars, or, they're selling off jewelry, or they're selling off items, through these seizures. And they take this money and, reinvest it, uh, in some sense, rightfully so, within the police department. But the police department is not who, needs this funding. It's the communities that are being affected by these things, so that you don't have the need for more of these crimes occurring, or you don't see more of these crimes occurring in these areas and things of that sort. So, when you made that point, that's a very valid point. And that's, another one of the key areas we should be looking at when it does come to reparations funding, on where it should be coming from, from the top down there. Now, on the second end of this today, we're looking at, current events and things going on, that affect the minority community currently in the news. And the biggest thing going on today, I would say, is the issue with Breonna Taylor and the charges brought against the officer on that end. Um, Now, I, prior to today, had never heard of wanton endangerment. That's just me personally. I had not too much information on, the actual charges and, how they occur and things of that nature. But I just, looking at what has been, charges being brought against one out of the three, you know, I'm still at all shocked. I can't believe that, after all this time and people continuing to protest and push, you know, for charges to be brought, and this is what we were given. It's like, I feel personally that they 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 did something just because the fact they felt they had to do something, but they did the very minuscule that they could do. So, just on that end, Mark, what is your take on this whole situation with the Breonna Taylor case and things of that nature?
So again, I want to be, 100% real and candid with everybody when it comes to what we're dealing with here. First of all, that officer was not charged in this. That officer was basically a charge for attacking innocent drywall. Let's be clear about that. His shots went into another apartment, which could have endangered someone theoretically. By the way, that person wasn't harmed in any way, shape, or form. But they called it for wanton endangerment because, engaging in an act which could have potentially endangered someone else's life. So, we're charging someone for attacking innocent drywall. We did not charge them for attacking an innocent woman. So let's be clear about that. Number one. The second thing, to be clear about is that their mind was made up about this well before today. They were boarding up buildings 3 days ago. I saw it on the news. They were boarding up buildings in the downtown area 3 days ago. They were bringing in National Guard troops yesterday for a grand jury decision that wasn't going to be released until today. They knew what they were doing. They knew how this was going to go. Matter of fact, the Attorney General for Kentucky, Cameron, I forget the rest of his name, he was actually speaking at the RNC. For a lot of people, a lot in our group probably didn't watch that much of the RNC, so maybe missed him entirely. I know I missed him entirely. But after hearing that, I actually went back and looked. Not only did this guy speak at the RNC, but he spoke a couple of different times about this case. So and in the press conference, he spoke out of both sides of his mouth by, on one hand, saying that, he has nothing to do with it. He's just applying the law as it was seen fit and as it was decided upon by the grand jury, while at the same time being sure to offer his own take on the case and how he truly believed that cops didn't do anything wrong. So this guy already had a specific political agenda that he brought to this case from the beginning. He applied it during its application. And also, let's be clear, everything from real life to even, scripted television, grand juries are basically run by prosecutions. They are presented cases, not in a neutral form. They're presented it in a prosecution heavy form. So when grand juries are supposedly given all the evidence, and they come back with no bill, it is foolish and naive to think that, hey, the prosecutor has got nothing to do with that. I just present everything that's there and that's all that's there. That's a joke. That's silliness. So, and then where does the media go with that? Where do the cameras go with that? They immediately go to outside. They go to what are people going to do? What are people going to do? Are there going to be riots? Are there going to be fires? Is there going to be this? Is there going to be that? Because again, this is a media-driven, kind of entity to hijack what really is necessary here. And this is something that this country saw back in the late 60s, where you had all of this unrest going on, and very quickly in the political realm, the injustices that led to the protests were quickly supplanted with this need for law and order. And law and order becomes again this bastard child catchphrase that is able to be adopted and used to say, oh, well, I need to protect you from them. Not to say that there's a lot of middle class whites in those protests. Oftentimes, there are anarchists that, when they are caught or turn out to be white and turn out to be from organizations that spoke about going into the crowds and doing this type of anarchy, and from the get-go, that stuff's not reported. What's reported is this got destroyed, that got burned, and we need protection from this. And there's always conveniently, a right-wing candidate that's there to provide that quote-unquote law and order, completely ignoring in this case that it is that person's country that this is happening in right now. This isn't a challenger. This is an incumbent. So when you look at the whole situation, it's meant to make you feel hopeless, right? It's meant to make you feel like, we're going around, we're doing all these things. People have been protesting in the streets for months on end. And, what is it getting us? Because at the end of the day, they just keep doing these things. They keep doing these things. But kind of a revelation that I had thinking about it today is like, while we're sitting here watching these people, they're going even more egregious. There are more even egregious things that are happening. They're being blatant about something, like in this case. They're basically taunting people who, don't feel the same way. They're pushing this envelope. And the reason that they're doing that is because they're getting desperate. When you see these marches that didn't go away in a week, when you see, these demonstrations that have bled into all facets of our society, when you see that it's no longer just a couple of pampered Hollywood actors that are talking about these things, but there are legitimate athletes with ties to the community who are standing out there. There are, whites standing out there with blacks. There are blacks standing out there with Hispanics. There are people get out there marching. There are as many white people being harmed by police in these, in these pushbacks as there are anybody else. And you can see that it's actually starting to take hold. You can see that it's actually starting to get people's attention. They run polls all the time, and the approval rating for groups like Black Lives Matter has more than quadrupled since its same time last year. That's not a small change. That is a significant ground-shaking event. So the message is taking hold, and they're losing their grip on this, kind of monopoly of the message, of the idea, of the racial divide. So, their rhetoric is stepping up. So this isn't a time to get defeated by this, because we're not actually losing. We're actually getting some traction. We're gaining some ground. We're actually getting some footholds and chipping away at the iceberg, and they're getting scared and desperate. Now, that does mean that it's a dangerous time, because that means, they're going to continue to ramp it up, and they're going to continue to push it even more as we head towards November and beyond. We need to be prepared for that. We need to be ready for that. And we need to think before we act. Tonight, we need to be at home. We need to protest. We need to protest during the day. We need to make our voices heard. We need to make sure people are registering to vote. We need to make sure people are ready to do some things, especially on the local level, to get some of these people out of their positions. We need police chiefs out of their positions. We need attorney generals out of their positions. We need district attorneys out of their positions. We need judges that are, that the ones that are able to be voted in and voted out of their positions. And that is the next logical step to being able to actually shape some change and move some things in here, because they are getting desperate. They look desperate. They act desperate. And this is what, and this is what we're going to see continuing to move forward as we continue to push towards justice that we're looking for.
Yes, sir. And on the sense of, I just, did a little bit of research on wanton endangerment, after hearing the charges brought. And I just want, people of the organization to be aware, and people be aware, period, of what this truly is. And, first off, it's a Class D felony. which it carries 1 to 5 years of incarceration or probation or a combination of both, but only up to 5 years. That's 5 years for taking someone's life. I mean, to me, that's just, that screams inequality. That screams unjust. But I even went further to look at, a couple cases where this has been a charge and the outcomes of these different cases and things of that nature. And one was actually as recent as this year in February. February 9th of this year, one man was actually convicted of wanton endangerment. His name was Carl Wells. And the big, huge, funny thing, sadly enough, about this, and the ironic thing about this, per se, was it was in Pulaski County, Kentucky, which is the same state that we're looking at. And when I dug a little bit deeper, I saw that Kentucky uses wanton endangerment similar to qualified immunity. They use it very similar to qualified immunity when it comes to people who are not minorities, is the easiest way that I could say it. Because a lot of the people who I saw who actually received the charge were not minorities. And the outcome on this specific case that I'm talking about with Carl Wells, he was sentenced to 5 years of supervised probation and to pay back restitution fees. And he had 5 separate wanton endangerment charges. Now we're looking back at Brett Hankinson, who's only received 3 counts of wanton endangerment. I mean, if you're looking at the difference in there, 5 years of supervised probation, and in his case, all he did was fired shots towards a neighbor's house. He didn't kill Mr. Carl Wells. Didn't kill anybody. He fired shots at a neighbor's house and recklessly discharged his weapon 2 other times that were recorded. But to only receive 5 years of supervised probation for something of that instance it's unequal. In minority communities, for these same actions and these same behaviors, in a minority community, when a young man is convicted of committing a crime, 9 times out of 10, if there was anyone else with him, they receive being an accessory or an accomplice to the crime, and they receive penalties on their end 9 times out of 10. So we're looking at this situation here in Kentucky where 1 out of the 3 officers is the only one facing charges. That's a red flag there automatically. Now, for this one officer to receive 3 counts of wanton endangerment by himself alone, there was enough counts there. It shows you that they're taunting the minority communities. It's 3 counts. It was 3 officers. You could have gave each one. But instead, they chose, I feel, as you said earlier, to continue to taunt the situation. And if you look into, as I said, Kentucky and their use of wanton endangerment, to most people, you're going to see a huge similarity between that and qualified immunity and the way it's used in many other states. So, I think we really need to, at this point, I don't know. I wish I had more that I could say. Like, I wish we could do more, but we're still at the will, or, we, how do we trump a system, that's there? How do we fight against these type of things when we've been calling for months for more than this, and this is what we're handed? And then you have a system that will go back and tell us, well, it's nothing we can do. The charges have already been brought. These are what the charges are. So
what I would say to that is, a couple of things. Number one, The first thing that needs to be done is what we're doing right now, which is highlighting some little known and unknown facts and statistics about this situation that shed a very ugly light on that situation. I mean, basically, they're using the wanton endangerment as an end run around qualified immunity. And again, I don't know that much about Kentucky law, but that's it's an end run around the qualified immunity, and it's also especially interesting when you consider the fact that one of the very first things that Kamala Harris said in her speech in accepting the vice presidential nomination was about attacking qualified immunity. So by using qualified immunity in this case, if you use the words, if you said the words and you actually put it in as qualified immunity, actually said it, it would bring more attention, more of a spotlight to something that, an opposition party candidate has already highlighted as a point of attack. That would be very helpful to them. So to get around that, what do we got left? Well, we got the wanton endangerment. Now, first things first, I can go ahead and tell you right now, if they convict that man, which I'm pretty sure they will not, the other person got 5 years supervised probation. This person's getting 1 year supervised probation at best. And something else that we need to make sure that we highlight over and over again, every time we get in a forum like this, we need to make sure we highlight it. No one is being charged with anything having to do with the death of Miss Taylor at all. They have flat out thrown it in our faces. This is a direct taunt. This is a middle finger, a naked one. Let's be clear. This guy's being charged because a neighbor's house got hit, so we kind of need to charge something, but it's something that no one's going to be penalized for. This man's not going to be hurt by this. This man's going to be able to go on and live his life. There's no getting around this. You're going to start seeing those. He made a mistake, but he was a good man. You're going to start seeing those reports coming pretty soon. As this quote unquote investigation ramps up and continues on. They already laid the foundation for that by the general running his mouth about how there are people who are not from here who think they can tell us what to do. Again, setting up a us versus them kind of scenario. Well, people need to understand that's exactly how civil rights works. Civil rights works by highlighting an inequality and an inequity in this particular area and using marches and using the media and using whatever other means possible to highlight it and make it naked to the world so everyone can see it, so that whether it be through laws changing, new administration coming in, or sheer embarrassment, being able to make someone do right where they would have never done right on their own. That is exactly how civil rights works. So bringing up as a taunt again that, outsiders may have their opinion on what's going on here, but they don't know what's going on here. That doesn't play and it doesn't fly. It's a joke. And it's not a funny one either. And it's not going to stop anybody. It's not going to stop people from continuing to seek what we're trying to seek. It's not going to stop anybody from going after the things that need to be going after. So now we know, and it needs to be another thing, another notch put up there as what we're looking at. We need to deal with qualified immunity when it comes to police. The ability to just kill people because you had a feeling or thought cannot stand any longer. And now we need to know, specifically in Kentucky, wanton endangerment needs to be addressed. How it's applied, when it's applied, where it's applied, how it's penalized, who makes that determination, and how. All those things are going to need to be looked at, and as we go forward, and what we do about it is what we're doing right now. Continue to identify what these situations are, call them out for the BS that it is, bring education to the situation by actually doing the work and doing the research, looking it up, checking out some cases, checking out some results, putting it out there so that people can continue to look at it. People can see it coming. People can see it for what it is, not listen to media spin, not listen to a couple of slick suits who are wordsmiths and find a way to twist it, but can see things for what they are and use their voting power to vote accordingly and make these mountains move.
Yes, sir. And I mean, to build a little bit off of the direction you're going in there, that was my next question, actually. it was, where do we go? Where do we go now? So I mean, you answered on that end, and just to elaborate a little, uh, that's all we can do. I mean, we can continue to push that for these other cases that are still bubbling, and for the convictions that have still not been brought towards other officers, and other incidents. I believe that this will be the blueprint uh, of how they believe the American people will accept uh, the outcomes of different situations. So I believe we have to prepare, especially in the minority community, and not lose the sense of progress that we have made so far uh, within such a short period of time of disappointment. Because I think our disappointment should just only clarify more so the need for changes within our system. I believe this disappointment shouldn't fuel us up to start rioting, or do things to only give the opposition more ammo against us. But let this fuel, as you said, going into the vote. This should be even more fire now in the minority community on why the need to vote this year is so important. you know this is, as you said, the attorney general put it off as it was on the grand jury. But, you know, even in your elections this year, especially locally, you need to look at, if there's an attorney general on the ballot, if there's a DA on the ballot, because these are the people who are leading the justice system currently. And these are the people who, when it comes to the justice system, we're going to need to change out to start revitalizing the justice system to fit an equality situation for all across the board. So going forward, in minority communities, these are aspects and things we talked about today that we really need to take into account, and we really need to be thinking about before we lose our grasp on this situation entirely, and other people are creating the rules still, which either way, we're going to have to live by. So we have to go into this voting process this year knowing what our goal is and what we're hoping to accomplish.
Exactly. I mean, we need them to understand they are more desperate now. They see that there is a chance they can lose their grip, and we need to continue to push that envelope. Like I said, I know that things like this can be incredibly disappointing. Decisions like this are incredibly disappointing, but we need to have what the other side does not have, and that is perspective. We kind of knew that this was going to be the case. We kind of hoped for something different, but we kind of knew this was going to be the case. I mean, again, why do you give somebody $12 million when you did nothing wrong, right? So we know, kind of this is just another step along the way, that this is another reminder that we cannot stop and that we cannot slow down, that we need to continue to push for what we're looking for and not compromise and not take a dangling carrot and not fall for the shiny object and not let them put the laser pointer on the wall and we start swinging at it and swiping at it and completely forget our way. We need to continue to push for these things because we are making them more desperate. They are making mistakes. Their naked bigotry is more out in the open more now than ever. We have the cameras on them. We have the sound bites. We're continuing to push and we're continuing to expose people there. And we're starting to get more and more people on the side of right than there's ever been before. So this is not a time to get disappointed and a time to kind of fall back on it and kind of think, well, what's the point of all of it? No, the point is the point. We need to keep pushing forward because we are creating inroads, we are creating dents, and we need to go into the next step in in this election cycle, which is using our voting power, paying attention, making mental notes, making sure we understand and hold people accountable. If there's somebody who's talking about dealing with qualified immunity, and there's somebody who's not, pay attention to that and vote accordingly, because one's on your side and one's not. If there are people talking about actually doing things in the minority community and there are people who are not, pay attention to that. There are people who think that this is okay and basically give you their complicity with their silence. Pay attention to that, because silence needs to be as loud as any megaphone that you can use. And, we need to use that so we can actually start to put a dent in this system.
Yes, sir. And I, a couple minutes ago, I saw it pop up that there was a statement made by Biden about an hour ago towards the Breonna Taylor's case, and I think that's a start from their camp. But who I'm really most interested in hearing from on this situation, just having a background and knowing a little bit more uh, about it in depth, would be Kamala Harris. Especially being a black woman, I'm interested in you know her take on this case, and I believe from whatever statement she makes, that will allow us a clear picture to see Biden's camps, uh, the way that they're going to attack these certain injustices, and the rhetoric that they have said already. How true is it that they're going to fall through with these plans, and changes, especially as we said, one of the biggest things impacting the minority community is the justice system, in all ways. So, I look forward to whatever statement, she's going to bring within the next, I would hope tomorrow, but the next few days here, you know, with her being the DA in California prior to running for vice president and being a senator, I would like to hear her take on this instance, myself.
Yeah, I mean, I want to hear I want to hear what's said. I want to hear what's not said. I want to hear who says what and who doesn't. I want to hear if there are plans or simple rhetoric. I want to hear I mean, you're probably not going to get plans like immediately, right? But I want to hear if, someone's going to say something realistic, if someone's going to say something that actually speaks to the actual pain that people are dealing with, and, understanding that these are things that need to be actually addressed, and that we don't put this under, under the cap of thoughts and prayers, and we don't put it under the caps of, oh, I feel with the family, I stand with the community. I need to hear more than that, right? And, for those who have, not said anything, again, I'll be paying attention to that as well, because they're not saying it for a reason, because they know that the base that they're trying to play to, they don't want to hear it. And, they're going to continue to, play the game and play the politics, and then hope upon hope that once the election cycle is over, that they don't need to bring it up again. And even if they do, they have no obligation to care. So we need to be cognizant of all of that as we go forward.
Yes, sir. And the last thing I do want to say today in our announcements on the way out, um, I think people should really be prepared heading into this fall and winter season with the huge spike of COVID cases in Europe most recently. You know, especially if you're going to be out protesting and things of that nature, make sure you're safe about it. Make sure you're wearing gloves and make sure you have on a mask, because we've just got to a point within this country with COVID that we've learned to semi-manage. So with that being said, it's no sense in taking tremendous steps back in areas of seeing huge case spikes when we're close to starting to see vaccines actually being produced and things of that nature. So make sure everyone, is being safe out there, and make sure you got your mask and your gloves and hand sanitizer and things of that nature there.
Yeah, make sure that you have those things going on. Make sure you plan your day. If you live someplace that has early voting, set yourself up to go vote on a day off. That way you don't have to worry about, line links and, things like that, because there are people that are seriously counting on all of these things going against you. They're counting on you staying home because you don't want to get sick. They're counting on you not taking care of yourself when you're out there. They're counting on you having to work and not being able to stand in a 3-hour line. They're going to use all of these things, because at this point they've lost on ideals. They have lost on justice and equality. They have lost on claiming that, we still own, we still have the economy. Like, really? 20 million people are still out of work. but the stock prices are up. So all these things are laid bare. So all that's left is old number one, old reliable suppression. So, they will use it. They'll continue to play on it. They'll continue to stoke your fear. They'll continue to stoke, anything that they can to hold on, because it's literally all they have left. And it's something that we can definitely take away.
And I mean, what is it? I believe we're, 43, 44 days away now. With us approaching election day that quick, and we're starting to see, everything unravel, quote unquote. I mean, unravel in the way that it is. People need to start waking up now and be ahead of the curve, instead of waking up, basically the day after election day. And sadly enough, we've seen bigger shockers in America in the past few years. So don't just assume that this is a situation that's going to go away, or it's a situation that's going to fix itself. We actually got to get out and push forward, with helping and generating these different ideals, as you said, and continue to push in the way that we are. And as I said, I understand people's frustrations, even on my end, but we have to make sure that whatever we do, we're doing it peacefully and we're doing it in an organized fashion, so that it doesn't give anybody any more ammo or any more rhetoric against our cause.
Absolutely.
Yes, sir. So thank everybody who tuned in today. And as I said, check out a couple of our segments on our YouTube page, and, check out a couple of posts and things that we'll be generating through the page in the next few weeks leading up to election time. We'll try to give people as much information as possible from our end on anything going on, currently, or any candidates that are running who we should really be keeping an eye on, and, be backing them from the minority community and their push for office.
Absolutely. Like, share, subscribe, share it with your friends, share it with family, anything that can be done to help. I mean, that's literally all we're here to do, is to get that information out there, give a little bit of perspective, share a little bit of personal experience, and help get that message out there.
Yes, sir. Thank you, guys.